Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be talking about metacognition and the direct link to leadership behaviour. My name is Sarah Maud. I'm the founder of the Mind Solution International. And let's start by understanding what is metacognition. Well, put very simply, metacognition is the awareness of the unconscious mind. And I spoke about this at length in my last video. So to summarize it here, the unconscious mind is that storehouse of applications, of programs, of systems, processes, basically an automatic operating system that is governing the way that you think, the way that you feel, the way that you respond to situations, how you act, how you behave, your assumptions, your perceptions, your behaviors, your survival-based structures, your belief-based structures. All of that is being run at the level of the unconscious mind 95 to 99% of the time. So once we've learnt to do something enough times, it becomes automatic. It becomes learnt. It becomes unconscious. It becomes habitual. The mind is strictly habitual. It works on pattern and repetition. So take the example of driving. When we're beginning to learn to drive, we're very conscious of what we're doing. But after a period of time, you can drive from home to work with very little awareness of what you're doing, planning your day in your head, reliving conversations, and bang, you're at work. And you probably don't really know how you got there. That's the unconscious mind in action. Now, where does this link with leadership behaviour? Well, one of the things that I've been really aware of from hundreds and hundreds of coaching conversations with business leaders is the kind of behaviour that they see in leadership meetings, exec meetings, exco meetings, that aren't exactly the kind of behaviour that we would want to see from our leaders. And I've been given examples of where somebody's literally witnessed their colleague throw somebody under a bus to save their own skin, to save their own neck, metaphorically speaking. And it's like, okay, so what is it that's happening here? Well, if leaders haven't cultivated the awareness of who they are being when they are doing, then they are operating from the unconscious mind. They are operating from how they have learnt to show up in situations. And this is why it is so crucial for them to cultivate self-awareness, for them to have the metacognition of how it is that they are being when they're doing. So when we see the kind of leadership behaviours which are throwing people under a bus, this is what's actually going on. So if you can imagine, or take your mind back to a leadership meeting, an exec meeting, an exco meeting, and you experience a perceived threat to life. Now, in a meeting, there is very rarely a real threat to life. But the mind and the body don't know the difference between what's a real threat and a perceived threat. So if we have a perceived threat to life, then this is what we'll do. We will activate our survival-based structure. And that influences how we behave in the moment. Now, you might be thinking, come on, Sarah, what are the kind of threats to life in a leadership meeting? Oh, there's lots of threats to life. One of the big threats to life, status. If there is a perceived threat to our status and we don't have the awareness, we don't have the metacognition, we haven't cultivated the awareness that helps us to expand our level of consciousness, then we'll default to survival-based responses. And the ego, if we think about the role of the ego loves status, thrives on it. So anything that is a perceived threat to our status, to our role in an organisation, to our responsibility, to our level of hierarchy in the organisational structure, we're going to default to that. So status. Identity. Anything that is a threat to our identity. Our identity is our sense of self. It's who it is that we think we are. But our identity is the personal mind, the egoic mind, the human mind, the finite mind. It's who we've created based on our thoughts, our past experiences, our beliefs. So anything that's a threat to our identity, and again, if we've not changed, transformed, or even become aware of these survival-based responses, they just automatically get activated. So status, identity, control, belonging, and a big one, competence. This is huge. So competence, if we have a perception that we're being judged, again, seen this time and time again, perception that we're being judged as not being good enough, being inadequate, being incapable. If there's a threat to that, again, survival-based structure comes out to play. And all of that influences our behaviour. So what are the kind of behaviours that we see when we're in survival mode? Withdrawal, blame, deflection, aggression, passive aggressive, judgment, people not taking accountability. I mean, how many times have we seen that? When we know that somebody has dropped a ball, and we can all drop a ball because we're human, we're going to make mistakes. But if we feel there's a threat to us being seen as incompetent, and our survival-based structure is, oh, no, I can't say that I'm wrong. I can't take accountability for this. Instead, I'm going to blame somebody else. Deflection, again, it's like being really dismissive. So when somebody is in a meeting and they're talking, we can just dismiss their comments. We can even see gaslighting, guilt tripping. We can even see really quite narcissistic tendencies, but I think we'll save that for another video. And if you think about it, what are some of the other kinds of behaviours that you've witnessed? Because I'm sure that everybody listening to this video has absolutely seen these behaviours. But what I want to express here is people are always doing what makes sense to them from their current level of thinking, from their current level of consciousness. So if people haven't cultivated the self-awareness that allows for metacognition, that allows them to see how they're being when they're doing, then they're just doing what makes sense to them. And it doesn't make it wrong, doesn't make it right. It just is a program. Now, clearly we want a team of leaders that are self-aware, that have the awareness of what's happening. Because the more aware that we are of what's happening, well, then we can start to choose a different response. We can start to behave differently. But so many leadership training courses, they try to change behavior without the awareness piece, without understanding survival structures, what's driving people's behavior at any given moment. Which is why understanding this, for me, it's the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle. Because I've seen with my own leadership coaching clients and the resilience training that we do in the workplace, is that when people can start to see who they are being when they're doing, well, that's where we can start to create change. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, seeing some of this behavior in ourselves, it's not comfortable. It's not easy to look at the mirror and go, oh, yeah, that's me. But what I would say is none of this is personal. It doesn't say anything about who you really are, your true identity, not your false sense of self. But we have learnt to think and behave and show up from a very, very early age. And so if we've never really understood how this works, if we've never really looked at ourselves, if we're like hamsters on a wheel, we keep doing, well, then you've always been doing what makes sense because you didn't have the awareness of how you were being. And I'm so aware that I see so many of my coaching clients that usually come to me probably about 45 onwards. And they've been at a senior level within an organisation for a number of years. But this is the first time that they start to look at their behaviour. They start to look at their beliefs, their insecurities, their sense of identity. And when they start to change and transform that, they go from being good leaders to amazing leaders. But we have to have that piece in place. So I would love, love, love to hear how this lands with you. What is it that you see in the workplace? What is it that you've seen maybe even in yourself? And if this is something that you absolutely know that you want to bring into your organisation, then do feel free to reach out to us. Details are in the description. But otherwise, thank you for being here, and I look forward to you joining me on the next video. Bye-bye for now.